Well, I'll be damned if it ain't that time of week again. Welcome back to 4 Plus. I'm your favorite host, Mr. Minus, and today we're gonna once again talk about horror's biggest medium, movies, particularly The Conjuring. The thing about this series is that just about everyone knows about it. Even if you're not a horror buff, you've likely heard or seen it. It was released 12 years ago in 2013, and directed by horror icon James Wan. The movie was a smash hit in theaters, having made about 15 times its budget back. This was pretty much set to become the next big thing in horror with money like that. It spawned a horror franchise that saw sequels, spin-offs, prequels to the spin-offs, and even sequels to the spin-offs with prequels. The forthcoming installment, Conjuring Last Rites, will be releasing very soon and will additionally be the final installment in the mainline franchise. On that note, however, it should be said that we are only going to look at the mainline Conjuring movies, as aside from Annabelle Creation, a lot of the extensive universe ranges from meh to fuck. Here, I'll do a speed review. Fuck, what the fuck, meh. There. With all that said, let's grab our crosses, drink our holy water, and get set for our adventure into the Conjuring universe. But before we begin, please be sure to subscribe and check the description for our socials. Alright, now we can go. The Conjuring. Our story begins with a logo of a business that fucks up so much it's kinda scary. We are greeted with an image of Annabelle as a trio is explaining that they believe the doll is possessed. Apparently a small girl had become fond of her and wanted to inhabit it. We cut to footage of the girls returning to see Annabelle sitting in the hallway, not where they left her. They find writing on the walls and eventually throw her in the dumpster, but later that night there is a very aggressive knock on the door. Guess the Girl Scouts are trying a more aggressive marketing campaign. They find another note at the door before another knock is heard inside the house now. Inside, they find Annabelle. We are then shown the main characters of our story, Mr. and Mrs. Warren, played by a night owl and a metal singer. Night Owl claims that Annabelle isn't possessed, instead it's a conduit to try and possess them. We are then shown that this was all video footage at a seminar. A blessing was done and the house is now free of demons. They answer a few questions and text explains that they are a very renowned duo of ghost hunters / demonologists. But they apparently witnessed one case that was so fearsome, so terrible, so mind-bendingly wicked that those of you of weak constitutions may want to leave the theater. Too late! Ready or not, here it comes. Based on a true story. This is The Conjuring. It's 1971 in Rhode Island, perhaps we'll see Peter Griffin, as a family is moving into their new home. We have a dad, a Volvo driving soccer mom, and 5 daughters, one being the prince from Bullet Train. Oh, and there's a dog who is already having issues with the house. One of the kids finds a music box outside and eventually the kids play hide and seek, or rather hide and clap. Basically it's hide and seek, but the hiders have to clap to help the seeker who is blindfolded. Call these kids cooks, cause this is a recipe for disaster. They break a wall open by accident where it's discovered there's a cellar down there. Later that night, the dog refuses to come inside still as the family sleeps tight. Already a red flag, never doubt the dog. Looks like the bedbugs did indeed bite as the mom has a bruise on her leg when she awakes. It's noted that all their clocks stopped exactly at 3:07 a.m. and it's quite cold. One of the girls outside goes looking for the dog only to find she is now going to heaven.
So sorry I died. I miss you so much.
We cut back to Night Owl giving a tour of the haunted room filled with cursed objects to a journalist, among them being the monkey and the Annabelle doll. The journalist seems impressed as we cut to the family again. The prince is asleep but thinks her sister is tugging at her foot as the father awakens to a thump with static on the TV before turning it off. He investigates some sounds in the house to find the window is open before he's told one of his daughters is sleepwalking. He goes to see her and sees she's doing what I do every time I see the news before putting her to bed. Next morning, mom has more bruises, starting to wonder if this relationship is unhealthy, as one of the kids is found talking to someone in the room despite her being the only one there. She claims she is talking to Rory, and he can only be seen in the music box mirror. The mom gives it a try, but is interrupted by the child. They play hide and clap again, which sees the mom getting fooled into something hiding in the closet. Thankfully, the daughter proclaims victory before anything happens to her. Later that night, the prince awakens in fear. She checks under her bed before waking up her sister in fear of someone standing in the corner. Neither she or we can actually see them, but they slam the door. The parents come to the rescue as the prince claims whatever it was wants them dead. Back with the Warrens, Night Owl goes all Mythbusters and manages to bust a false haunting. Once again, we cut to the family as the mom does her chores but hears a clap, assuming the girls are playing a game again. She goes out to see everyone's in bed, so she follows the claps. All the pictures fall off the walls quite loudly, which is shocking that it doesn't wake anyone else up, as the grandfather clock rings. The clap leads her to the cellar and locks her in. While down there, we get probably the most iconic scene in the whole movie. I actually remember when I was a teenager, this was a prank we'd play on each other. If someone was busy reading or focused on something, we'd clap next to their head. It just goes to show how wildly impactful this movie really was. One of the kids awakens to see another case of sleepwalking is occurring. She puts her to bed, but hears a sound in the wardrobe. It turns out to be empty, but someone is indeed waiting on top. The father comes home from work and comes to the rescue. We then cut to another seminar with the Warrens, who showcase a possession and explain the process. Step 1 being infestation, where the demon sets up shop in your home. This is where all the ghostly shit occurs. Oppression is when the ghost begins finding its target, primarily the most mentally vulnerable, and then we get possession. You know what that is.
Fuck this.
The mother of the family begs the Warrens to come and investigate their house, much to Night Owl's dismay, and the two casts get acquainted as Night Owl investigates and asks a few questions, leading to the cellar. They interview the family, and Mrs. Warren attempts to see Rory, but once again she fails. She does, however, see a hanging body. They're convinced the house is indeed haunted, and breaks the news to the family. Mrs. Warren claims she saw it the second she walked inside, and that moving isn't going to help. The plan is to perform an exorcism that requires approval from the church, which requires proof of demonic activity. Therefore, it's time to set up those cameras. Back at home, the Warrens do some research. Turns out the house has a dark history. It was inhabited by Bathsheba, a woman who was related to a convicted witch in the Salem witch trial days. She had a child, but 1 week after its birth, she already got sick of it and tried burning it. She was caught and then cursed anyone who would take this land, while proclaiming her love to Satan. After that, she hung herself at 3:07 a.m. It would appear we are dealing with witches, not the Scarlet type. Additionally, there was a child named Rory who went missing in the woods, and his mother committed suicide in the cellar. Even worse, there was a drowning in the pond, and another suicide in a house nearby. Sounds like quite the ghost party to me. They notice once the clock strikes 3:07 a.m., however, their tape recorder begins to play screams, likely those of the dead. The Ghost Avengers assemble to set up their investigation site, complete with a groovy montage. We're told the cameras will automatically take a picture if they detect changes in temperature. Night 1 rolls by as the Warrens go into the cellar. The movie goes around found footage style, but not much occurs until they leave where the room door slams shut. The next day rolls by as things have calmed down. The mom goes to take an early bedtime before the ghost attacks her. Mrs. Warren is startled, but she's suddenly fine. Never underestimate the strength of a power nap, I guess. Night 2 rolls by as our crew hears some voices outside the house before catching some movement. One of them has an encounter with a maid, which draws the attention of the crew before we see another case of sleepwalking. Night Owl claims that this isn't sleepwalking and instead someone is with her. While they try to break the door down, the crew can hear audio of someone else in the room with her. The voice sounds like a child. They get inside, but the child is missing, and Night Owl uses his trusty owl light to find her hidden in a spot behind the wardrobe. Mrs. Warren goes in to investigate, finding Corey Taylor's favorite type of knot, and then takes fall damage. Landing in the cellar, she uses the music box and sees a woman behind her crying with a bloody knife. The lady teleports in front of her as more ghosts are coming up to play. Mrs. Warren then pulls a Barry Allen and escapes at the cost of her necklace. Upon getting to the main floor, she claims the ghost is feeding on the mother as all the crosses fall victim to gravity. One of the girls gets dragged by the hair across the room. A pair of scissors saves the day, and the footage is now being sent to the church as proof of the necessity of an exorcism. Mrs. Warren hangs out near the pond, but sees her daughter in the water, prompting her to call home in fear of their daughter's safety. She's fine for now, as everyone departs from the house. The evidence is presented to the church, and the father is indeed now a believer, and agrees to send it to the upper church grandfathers? Their daughter, Judy, wakes up in the middle of the night to lightning, not McQueen, and enters the haunted room. Annabelle is uncaged, and she locks herself in a room. It's the same room as Annabelle. The parents arrive and break down another door before saving Judy, only to find that Annabelle is indeed caged. The mom, meanwhile, has taken the prince and another daughter from their motel for some reason. The father calls Night Owl, and they all meet at the house. They run down to the cellar and stop her from playing with scissors. They get the kids out, but the mom can't leave, or the witch will take her out. She gets dragged back to the cellar, and it's a wrestling match. The witch versus the witchers. She's tied to the chair, and they conclude there's only one thing left to do. They gotta do the exorcist. You know what they say. You want something done right, perform an exorcist.
Fuck this.
The power of Christ is indeed compelling, which sees her fly around like an amateur. She tries to escape and take the kids. Night Owl calls out Bathsheba as they all cheer the mother on to defeat Dovovich. She defeats her inner demons and the sun rises. Everyone seems happy and alive as the Warrens return home, as we are shown the music box one last time. Cut to credits, play Linkin Park, and show pictures of the real people. Well, that was quite the ride. The Conjuring definitely captured the attention of audiences for a reason. There were some cheap jump scares, but a lot of the house haunting scenes were very effective in that it kept you in suspense. Simple things like doors creaking and windows squeaking were effective as you anticipated something to jump out or attack the characters. Additionally, they made good use of hiding the villains until near the end. The scene where the prince is staring in the corner in fear was great, despite the fact we couldn't see anything. This makes the ending all the more impactful and interesting when we finally get to see the demons inhabiting the house. My only issues with the movie was that despite the fact that the haunting scenes were good, I do feel it took a bit long. A lot of the first half is them building up to the eventual arrival of the Warrens, and yes, it does explain that the Warrens need to be sure of the demonic activity before jumping in. So in some ways, it can be forgiven that the first half is a bit slower.
This is the opposite of going fast. Come on in.
Overall, I'd say this was a good introduction to the series, and it's easy to see why this became the next big-time horror franchise. But this was only the beginning. The Conjuring 2. With the first movie being very well received, it was only a matter of time before a sequel would be made. Released in the turbulent year of 2016, The Conjuring 2 saw James Wan return to direct with both Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga set to return their roles. Despite it being the highest-earning horror movie of the year, it didn't quite beat out the first one in terms of its US revenue. But if money was the decider of all quality, then the Minions movies would be cinematic achievements. Does it manage to hold a candle to the original movie? Let's find out. The movie opens up with the story of a family needing the Warrens to confirm demonic activity in a house. Using her mystical powers, Mrs. Warren is able to get a reenactment of a family murder. She wanders the house in her astral form before coming across a mirror that has the singer from Dogma behind her. The nun attacks as more horrific imagery floods her mind. If the story of a man taking his rifle and murdering his whole family in the night sounds like a Ryan Reynolds movie to you, then you'd be right, as what we just saw was the Amityville case. We are told that during this whole thing, however, there was another case being made, just for them, off in the most horrifying land of them all, England. All of this is based on another true story. May God help us all. We are then shown footage of England before following a group of kids. The kids return home to their single mother who hasn't received a penny of child support. Is that you, Dad? The kids get ready for bed before one of the kids uses a makeshift Ouija board. The kid decides life is too easy, so let's fuck around with it. Nothing happens, so it's lights out. One of the kids, however, suddenly wakes up in the living room. Another kid hears an aggressive knock at the door. Must be the Girl Scouts again. Somehow, but no one is there. The next day, the Warrens are on a show and are basically getting told by an outsider that they're full of baloney. Take note of this scene for later in the video, by the way. Night Owl is understandably mad as we're back with the kids again. They play with a music box-like toy singing the Crooked Man rhyme. It's nighttime again as one of the kids begins talking in her sleep. She seems to be quite distressed, but eventually quiets down. Suddenly, she starts talking to herself. She even switches voices. She falls back asleep only to do it again. The sister somehow hears another man's voice speak to her. They go back to sleep somehow as the boy is going back to bed when suddenly his toy truck comes into the room. He puts the toy back into his play tent before it comes back out as a man yells at him. Understandable, to be honest. If someone kept pushing toys into my house, they'd be lucky I only yell at them.
Get off my lawn!
They get their mother, who thinks it's just their imagination. She finds one of the girls on the rocking chair asleep, but also has a fever. We cut to the next day as it's raining, with the sick child staying home. She's even watching the tele before it switches channels to the scariest footage of all, political TV. Even scarier, the remote is now missing. She finds it on the rocking chair from earlier before the TV dies. She sees a man in the chair in the reflection before he appears behind her, yelling that it's his house. I am not gonna lie, so far, this ghost is a mood. Night Owl, meanwhile, makes fan art of the singer from Dogma since he dreamed about her, odd, which disturbs Mrs. Warren. The family is getting ready for bed, and the sleepwalker takes action to keep herself in bed. She falls out of the bed somehow as the Girl Scouts knock on the door again. She opens up to see no one there again. She heads downstairs as the chair rocks again, leading her back into her room and blocking the door. The door opens again as she hides under the covers, but the sheets are pulled off. The bed starts to shake, so they run to their mother, one of which has a bite on her shoulder. The mother concludes they've been messing with the Ouija board before the cabinet slams the door closed. Immediately, the family runs to the house across the street, and the police investigate but find nothing. They hear noises upstairs and see the chair move on their own. The police understandably bail but refer them to the church. Meanwhile, back in the States, the Warrens are warning before the mother sees the Dogma singer in the house. I'd be honored if I was in her position. Tracking her to a room, she runs at Mrs. Warren before it's revealed all to be a dream. Within the dream, however, she sees Night Owl getting backstabbed and finds out she was tearing up her book. Thankfully, there are no paper cuts. Back in England, the mother is approached by a TV representative who wants to do an episode on their situation. She agrees as the host tries to communicate with the spirit. There isn't much luck at first before suddenly the sleepwalker starts acting strange. They shift their focus to her as a voice comes from her. He sings the Bill Nye the Science Guy song, revealing his name to be Bill Wilkins. He's 72 years old, hailing from the grave after dying in his sleep in the chair in the corner. He loses his grip on the girl before we cut to the mom now living with the neighbors. In the dead of the night, a bell rings as the music toy plays. The young boy sees the dog growling at something outside before he transforms into a lanky man. He recites the Crooked Man poem while chasing him back to his mother. They see the sleepwalker walk into the room as shit starts flying, literally, and then she starts spasming. The Warrens are shown the audio the TV people got from the father. They want them to investigate as they can't be sure if it's a hoax or not. Mrs. Warren fears her vision, but will eventually give in to it, deciding to go. One ticket to England later, the TV people meet with the Warrens and take them to the house. They're shown around the house and meet the kids, and eventually the Warrens want to see the girl speak again as proof that there's something wrong. At first, it seems like a bust before the girl says they need to turn around if the spirit is to speak. They all play along, and sure enough, Billy Willie comes out to play. Night Owl speaks to him as he tries to intimidate our hero. He is unshaken and confronts him. The demon doesn't want to move on from this world, so Night Owl pulls out the Doom Cross. Billy Willie screams, and eventually the girl is back in the driver's seat. Later that night, however, both the Warrens seem to be skeptical of the situation, as they don't sense a presence, speculating this might just be a mental illness. Later that night, a whistle can be heard in the house as the sleepwalker awakens on the roof with Billy Willie in his chair. He eventually goes up the stairs as she's pulled through the roof and onto the upper floor. The crosses do a little dance and then a handstand before Billy Willie attacks. The mother tries to get inside and locks eyes with Billy Willie as Night Owl unlocks the door and gets inside. They find her alone in the room crying before we cut the next day. The Warrens are shown pictures of the bite, which seems to be too big for any of the kids. The information about Billy Willie seems to check out, but there are still some skeptics. Night Owl is still unsure, as it's speculated the mom is doing this for better housing. The Warrens decide to make like Ezio Auditore and take a leap of faith, but evidence is still needed. The Warrens return to the home as Night Owl gets possessed by Elvis to sing for the family.
Thank you very much.
The house is then set up with cameras, and we're back at it again. Night Owl and the mother get attacked while in the flooded basement, seeing the mom got bit by the same creature that bit her daughter. The kids meanwhile set up a Christmas tree as one of the kids can see something in the kitchen. Much like with the prince, it's invisible to us. The main boy decides it's time to go for it and attack as the daughter suddenly appears next to him with a knife. Night Owl once again murders a door and finds the room trashed and empty. They find her locked up in a generator box as Night Owl compels her with the power of Christ. They get her out, but are shown footage that basically kills the whole case. Apparently the sleepwalker made a mess in the kitchen and even deliberately cut her hand, which was caught on tape. The Warrens sadly seem to have given up on the case as they're all served an eviction from the mother. Despite all they've seen, the Warrens know the church won't do anything now. They head to the train station where Night Owl realizes something. Playing footage of the 2 times Billy Willie yelled at them together reveals it was a broken message. I'll say this, if I heard that footage on the train, I'd literally never ride that shit ever again. Billy Willie was actually begging for help. This sends Mrs. Warren to the house in her astral form, confronting Billy Willie. He claims he wants to go, but he can't. The spirit in the house gives her a riddle as suddenly the dogma singer arrives yet again. Mrs. Warren urges them to go back as meanwhile the spirit attacks the kids and takes a hold of the daughter entirely now. The mother runs outside as the thunder rolls and the lightning strikes. While driving back, they solve the riddle of Billy Willie. It's the name. In order for them to beat the dogma singer, they will require the name. Night Owl creates more property destruction but is knocked down by a couch. He then runs to the back where he breaks and enters once again. He's locked inside as he decides he's going to solo this level, despite his wife begging him to play this on co-op. He runs inside heroically and breaks open an entry from the main floor. It's all for naught, however, as he takes steam to the face. All seems to be lost, however, as suddenly our saviors arrive. Sam and Dean Winchester. Just kidding, I wish. It's actually Vic with an axe. Night Owl blindly walks around compelling the house with the power of Christ. Mrs. Warren, meanwhile, figures out the name of the dogma singer. Apparently, when she was ruining her book earlier, it was actually her writing the name down. That being Voldemort. Nah, it's actually Valak. Thor ults on the tree, leaving the sharp stump exposed as Night Owl gets jumped by the crooked crackhead. He manages to escape and makes it to the daughter, catching her right before she jumps out the building. He's hanging onto a curtain as Mrs. Warren gets inside and confronts Valak Dogma. She casts her out and saves her husband at the last second. The next day rolls by and once again everyone is alive and well. We're told the mother lived the rest of her life in the house but died in the chair that Billy Willie owned. The music toy is brought back to the haunted room, cut to credits, and play Linkin Park. Conjuring 2, at least to me, took everything the first movie did and improved on it. My previous complaint of there being just a bit too many haunting scenes was fixed, as we don't spend too much time watching the family get haunted by the demon. Additionally, I will say this one was actually a lot more unnerving than the first one. The voice of Billy Willie was actually a lot more terrifying. I also felt the scene where Night Owl first talks to Billy Willie to be amazing. The visual of him sitting in the chair out of focus as Night Owl speaks to him was genius. The bit where we have the fake out of the Warrens giving up was a bit cheap, however. On one hand, it did show that the demon is a lot smarter than most, as it meant that they were trying to fool them into leaving so they could get away. But it also did feel a bit contrived that the Warrens just gave up and then suddenly have an epiphany on the last second. That said, it was still a good one with a tense ending to match. Overall, Conjuring 2 does everything a sequel should do. It brings more scares, improves on the mistakes of the past, and builds on its characters. Hopefully the third movie can continue the legacy, right?
It's so boring.
The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It. Despite being the third entry in the franchise, The Devil Made Me Do It is actually the first for a lot of things in this franchise. For starters, it's the first mainline movie that ditches the numbered part of the name and instead opts for a longer title. It also holds first place with the longest wait between movies, as it was released in 2021, a whole 5 years after the first film. Part of this is because there was an event that happened called the pandemic. You may or may not have heard of it, but it halted the film's release as it was originally intended to be a November 2020 release. Despite the film being released in both theaters and streaming, the movie did manage to make its money back, being a total of $206.4 million on a $39 million budget. That said, this is the second lowest turnout for the franchise. Was it perhaps due to the pandemic, or is it the fact that this was also the first one not directed by James Wan that played a hand in it? Perhaps it's both, but there's only one way to find out. We open up to a house that's seen better days as a prayer by Night Owl is spoken in the background. We are told that the protagonists of the franchise were called into an exorcism on an 8-year-old boy. We catch them in the middle of the ritual before they pause to put the boy to bed. Later in the night, he hears the doorknob turning, so he decides to hide in the bathroom. Personally, would have chosen inside the toilet, not the shower, but what do I know?
Why did you make me do this?
While hiding, he gets showered in blood, literally, as the family breaks another door to rescue him. The child, however, is armed and dangerous, leading to them having to do yet another impromptu exorcism. The power of Christ compels, the house products go flying to the moon, and the kid gives Mr. Fantastic a run for his money. Eventually, he breaks free. His brother gives him a pep talk and then makes a deal with the devil, which seems to have worked. Night Owl is quite worried and passes out. We are then told that this was the start of the most sinister event in their career. Sounds very familiar. Gee, I bet this is based on a true story too. Wow, how did I know?
How original.
Night Owl is said to have suffered a heart attack during the chaos and is hospitalized. Things don't look too good for him until we see the brother, named Arnie, waking up with his girlfriend. The two are headed out of town, it seems, but while there, Arnie notices strange sounds around the house before we cut back to the hospital. Things still aren't looking good for our Night Owl as Mrs. Warren remembers the day they met, and now we're back with Arnie, who is making the Lorax very unhappy by cutting a tree. More spooky stuff happens as he drops a chainsaw, nearly evil deading the man below. Arnie returns home feeling a bit sick, but we see Night Owl has awoken. He's still not feeling too cheery as he remembers the deal that the devil and Arnie had made. Arnie is still tweaking out at his house before he sees his buddy Bruno biting the lady. He panics and pulls her away, but it almost seems like she's afraid of Arnie instead of Bruno. Arnie seems to be having a vision of a monstrous Bruno crawling towards him, and then he stabs him to death and takes a nice stroll down the road before the police show up and take him in. We hear a news report of Bruno being stabbed 22 times, just short of 28.
28 stab wounds.
The Warrens are with Arnie in a holding cell as he recites a prayer. It's believed due to him being able to read from the Bible proves he is not possessed, but this doesn't rule out the idea that he might have been at one point. This is pretty much the setup of the movie. The Warrens need to see if there was a demonic presence at play with the life of Arnie in the balance as he faces jail time, or maybe even worse, a death sentence. The Warrens, with a showcase of their room, are able to convince a lawyer to defend him under the circumstances of being possessed. The death penalty is confirmed to be on the table as the Warrens start their search back at the exorcism. We cut to 5 months earlier with the family moving into the house. The kid finds a waterbed and then someone inside the waterbed trying to get him to go for a swim. We cut back to the present day as the Warrens investigate the waterbed room, finding what's more than just water damage on the floor. Mrs. Warren goes into the crawl space under the house. She finds some kind of totem under the house, which is confirmed to be a witch's totem. Looks like we're back at our old enemy of the franchise. The father, however, remembers that there is an old father who might be able to help, as this kind of stuff is his specialty, considering he spent 9 years facing off against a cult. Despite his talents, he has chosen a peaceful life of farming, but he is still able to help.
Farming. Really? Man of your talents?
He confirms this is quite professionally made and shows them his collection in his basement. He describes the wicked nature of the aforementioned cult as they sacrificed a newborn, leading to the mother laying her head on a train track as her method of suicide. Arnie is back in the asylum, cleaning the floors as more spooky stuff occurs, like objects moving, lights going out, and patients singing creepy songs. He's attacked from behind and gets wrestled down by the staff before we see the Warrens continuing their investigation as they get a call claiming a detective has information for them. He tells them that they remember a case with a similar totem and even a similar method of murder. He's skeptical of their satanic mumbo-jumbo, so he asks Mrs. Warren to prove her psychic abilities by guessing the murder weapon of the case. She's able to do so, and we're headed to the crime scene. Upon arriving, Mrs. Warren can already sense this place has seen evil things. She uses her psychic abilities to essentially get another reenactment of the crime itself. In it, we see 2 girls walking around in the woods before one of them seemingly goes into kill mode at a moment's notice. She follows the girl almost to her death as something tries to drag her off the cliff. Night Owl comes to the rescue, and later that night we see the police have arrived. They found a body, and it seems that the detective is fully on board with their satanic mumbo-jumbo. They get a call from a lady at Arnie's house in a panic, seemingly afraid Arnie will off himself at the behest of the demon. They tell her to call the prison chaplain, but the call gets dropped. We cut to inside the prison as Arnie is given holy water from the chaplain before we're back with the Warrens. They come to the conclusion that this is likely a curse instead of a possession. And now back with Arnie, the poor guy sitting in the corner of his room tweaking out yet again as he makes himself an anti-sea bear circle with the holy water. The Warrens arrive at the coroner's office and then proceed to break in. This dude really is a menace to all doors. They get inside and find the body referred to earlier. Mrs. Warren holds its hand to channel her mystical powers, to which she has another vision. In short, she finds a satanic altar and is able to find the spirit targeting Arnie. After calling upon Ozzy Osbourne, she stops Arnie from cutting his life into pieces with her astral form. She confronts the witch, but the lights go out and one of the bodies gets a second chance, causing Night Owl to have to save his wife. They then discover if they destroy the original altar, they can break the curse. As for the witch, though, she has to get this curse down, or else she'll die. Later in the night, Night Owl, being a night owl, wakes up and notices his wife is gone. He walks around a bit before coming into contact with the Wicked Witch of the Arnie. The coroner body is back for round 2, so Night Owl fights back before realizing he's attacking his wife. They find a bunch of flowers were sent to them yesterday, but they seemingly died in the span of one day. Inside the vase, they find a totem. The next day, Night Owl continues his investigation and is able to pinpoint a general area to put an end to all of this. Mrs. Warren, meanwhile, goes to the father looking for a translation as Night Owl hurriedly leaves the house. The father reveals there needs to be 3 victims, a child, a lover, and a man of God, for this ritual to be completed. It would appear the targets were the child at the start, Arnie, and now Night Owl, who is disobeying traffic laws right now. Mrs. Warren follows the creepy Christian old man into his basement, where it's revealed that the father is also a father of an occultist. Not just any occultist, but the one causing all this mayhem. Arnie, meanwhile, is getting read a bedtime story before we see Mrs. Warren leaving the room. Unfortunately, the daughter returns and trims her family tree. Mrs. Warren is able to find the altar, but comes face to face with the daughter. Night Owl arrives at the scene as the daughter attacks Mrs. Warren. She escapes only for the cultist to take control of the Night Owl and sends him on a path of a violent divorce. Arnie, meanwhile, doesn't like the bedtime story and starts convulsing as the father recites Latin. Things are only getting worse for every party involved as Night Owl and Arnie are only getting more aggressive. Thankfully, Night Owl remembers he's married and breaks the altar. Arnie is set free and the witch bitch gets twisty with it as the devil comes to claim her soul. Unfortunately for her, it's not Lucifer because this would end very differently. The next day we see Night Owl add to his collection with our cameos from Balak Dogma and Annabelle, as meanwhile Arnie stands trial. We are told Arnie served 5 years in prison and got married behind bars. Bro must have called Saul. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, or rather just Conjuring 3, as previously stated, is the first one in the main line not to be directed by James Wan, and I'm not gonna lie, it kinda shows. I wouldn't say it's a terrible movie, but it definitely is the weakest of the 3. Maybe it's just the fact that we've become so wise to the act of it being a true story, but I didn't find the story all that compelling. I do give it credit for stepping out of its comfort zone and making it more of a court horror instead of just another house haunting movie. But in some ways I do feel that's where the best scares in the franchise come from. There isn't anything cool like the chair trick they did in Conjuring 2, and there isn't anything all that iconic in this one. The last 2 movies had Annabelle and The Nun, and while both had less than stellar movies to come, they at least resonated with audiences and that made the franchise stronger all for it. There's nothing here of that nature at all. Additionally, I just found the story kind of boring overall. I didn't feel a lot of tension or stakes like I did in the last 2 movies, especially leading up to the finales for both movies. There was a sense of terror, but also a sense of finality. This one feels like it just came out of nowhere and didn't feel all that memorable. That said, I'd rather watch this than La Llorona. So that's The Conjuring for you. The movies are flawed, but they are at least very well executed and crafted films. It's a franchise that is quite pivotal to horror as a whole, as I'm sure many people in my generation probably got hooked onto horror or at least introduced to this genre because of it. I feel these movies are just scary enough to give newcomers a thrill but also not turn them away from the genre like some other James Wan products might do. It should be noted that a huge part of why The Conjuring got big was the fact that the movie claimed it was all real events. In reality, however, it's more like these movies were inspired by real events. Remember that one scene I told you to remember regarding the talk show and them being called phonies? Sadly, that is kinda true. Yes, the Warrens did indeed visit these places and did indeed meet these people, but a lot of the more dramatic, intense scenes aren't said to have happened. The Warrens themselves are faced with a lot of criticism regarding their work, as some claimed they were even scam artists. In some extreme cases, there were even allegations of Ed having an affair with an underage girl named Judith. If it is true or not, it isn't entirely clear, but it should be noted when these movies were made, Lorraine Warren was very insistent that there was no portrayals of them engaging in affairs or particularly sex with a minor. On the surface, this is a reasonable demand, but considering their history, it is a little suspicious. It does sort of hurt the viewing experience if you're more aware of the real events, as the movie portrays them as this couple whose love conquers literal demons. At the end of the day, though, it is a movie. We come to these things for entertainment, and we go to documentaries for factual information. And again, the fact that this movie was able to spook a generation into believing all this was real was heavily influential in getting more people into the genre. Despite their flaws, I do like these movies. I'd say I'd give the first one a high 7 out of 10, 2 an 8 out of 10, and 3 a 6 out of 10. It's okay, not even Shrek can have a perfect trilogy. Well, that was quite a ride of demonic and heavenly proportions. We here at 4plus always love having you, as this channel has really become special to all of us thanks to you. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like and a comment. And if you have suggestions, feel free to leave them here or even in our Discord, as we're always happy to see what you guys are all interested in. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm going to go sit in my rocking chair for a minute.
Fuck this.